a big bottle of water now. Well, anyways, hello and welcome to another episode of Alex's Afternoon Art Show. Today, I'm in an odd mood, as one can see from my large bottle of water. Regardless, today we are going to be drawing Catwoman. It's going to be a bit echoey in here because I'm moving soon, so you've got more acoustics in the room to deal with. Anyways, today I'm going to be drawing Catwoman. We're going to be talking a little bit more about dynamic poses because we've been talking about that a lot lately. And we're also going to go a little bit into redesign again, my favorite topic. Okay, so as per usual, I have done my little base sketch already. I've put in a lot more detail than I normally would here today because, again, I've been trying to make these a little shorter because oftentimes the recordings can run for maybe nearly 3 hours. And in the event of technical difficulties, I want to make them as short as humanly possible without sacrificing on the quality of the drawing. But yeah, so I filled in a lot more details in this, so it should speed me up a little bit, in theory. In practice, that's another story entirely. There's a good chance that this could take really long, like it normally does. But yeah, we'll see. Anyways, I'll get on with the drawing. Actually, very quickly, I do want to say that this reference, I have no idea where I got it. I just saw it in my reference folder and I was like, oh, this will be perfect. Because initially I thought that I wanted to use this to employ the Frankenstein method, of where I take a bunch of pieces of reference and I kind of cobble them all together into something vaguely cohesive. But the reference that I had just didn't mesh, didn't gel. And so this I found and I was like, oh, this is a perfect piece of backup reference in case everything does not go well. And it did not. So it was handy that I had it. But yeah. There's a few things here, like this arm I'm definitely going to need to make a little bigger because this arm is further away and it's bigger. So that's just a few little things I'll need to fiddle with in order to kind of come up with something a bit more consistent. But yeah. Anyways, we'll get on with this. Actually, again, before I get too deep into this, there was a thing which I wanted to demonstrate, and it was, I'll even open up a new thing for this, and it is, so whenever you're doing a pose that is, how am I going to explain this? Whenever you're trying to do a pose that is dynamic, not necessarily an action pose or something like that, because action poses you typically want a bit more perspective, a bit more kind of intensity of the lines and stuff like this. But whenever you're looking for a dynamic pose, you're not necessarily looking for intensity so much as you are an interesting pose. So in this instance, I'm going to talk a little briefly about a little principle they use in animation, because it's always nice to apply things from different disciplines to what you're doing at any one given moment. And that is, whenever you're doing a pose, you kind of want to form a bit of a curve a little bit. You want an interesting motion that is still like kind of that it basically forms one cohesive line that moves through the character. So in this instance there is a line that goes like that throughout the character, a little curve that goes all the way down like this and then out the legs. But yeah, here the secondary line here, that's not necessary, but the curve follows through from the head to this foot here. And so then this other leg isn't really necessary, but it is necessary for the character, for them to look like a person, or a two-legged person at the very least. But yeah, you would have this kind of curve and it kind of guides your eye through it. And in this instance, it doesn't just end at the head, it goes up through the arms. But yeah, that's just the kind of the basis of it. And that's the kind of thing that you'd be looking for when you're doing a dynamic pose over an action pose, because an action pose, again, as I say, you need a bit more, there's usually a bit more kind of perspective and stuff going on in an action pose. There's usually a bit more motion, a bit more kind of like turns and odd angles and stuff like this to make them look a bit more intense and like there's an action scene going on. But yeah, that's just the kind of simplicity of that. And that was really all I wanted to say on the dynamic poses for the most part. Really, was that yeah, you just kind of the curve and little things like that are kind of what lend to making it look a little bit more interesting in that sense. Oh, I can't bog down on that either. Give me a bit of trouble. You see, in this instance, there is a slight bit of perspective in the. Oh god, that eye doesn't look great. There's a slight bit of perspective in that this is a slightly low angle. It's not a proper low angle, but it's a lower angle. Like I mean, you can see the bottoms of her nostrils, so it is a bit of a low angle. Not so much of a low angle that you would be kind of seeing like crazy heavy perspective, like you'd be able to see underneath the eye socket and stuff like that little area. But yeah, there's enough perspective there that it's kind of giving a bit more of an interesting look to it. Okay, so you might have been wondering how exactly this was a redesign until about now, whenever I decided to, add in the scarf. But yeah, I've kind of mentioned briefly things like this before, but I always feel like Gotham is supposed to be a cold place, or at least a place that is not exactly hot at a nighttime. So I always feel like kind of it would make sense to add in more things like scarves and stuff like that, and I always kind of think of the Penguin having the big fur collar and stuff like that, and that comes from the movies. But yeah, in this instance, I feel like the scarf makes a lot of sense now, so I think it's interesting. I like it. So, yeah. Talking very much for the last little bit, and it's because there's been kids screaming outside for ages, so I've been trying to limit my words a little bit so that doesn't pick up on the audio. It's very annoying though. Here's a little trick for whenever you're drawing like tubes or rope or stuff like this, stuff which has that kind of like rotating round pattern. You can just do little swiggles and it'll look fine. You don't need to spend forever like individually putting in everything or every rung or what have you. You can just do these little squiggles and it'll look just the same. It might not look that great whenever you're zoomed in, but whenever it's colored and all this stuff and shaded, you won't be able to tell the difference. And I mean, looks fine. Doesn't need to look amazing. Stuff like this, like a tiny little detail, doesn't really need to draw your eye. You don't need to be sucked in and just go, wow, this person really knows how to draw rope. Because up to a certain point, you're just kind of wasting your effort by putting so much kind of time into little details like that. And I mean, at the end of the day, you're drawing for yourself. But if you really want to spend the time and do whatever with your small tiny details, it's perfectly fine. I'm just saying that if you want to kind of skip over little things like this, no one will really care. No one will really care, and people won't really be able to tell the difference. I'm just going back and adding in a few folds now that I've kind of done the bulk of the drawing, because I mean the bottom here is just going to be the boots, so I mean I've kind of done the bulk of the details, so I'm just adding in a few little kind of wrinkles and stuff where there would be folds in the suit. So, because I mean it's a tight suit, you wouldn't really be seeing many, but you'd be seeing a little bit around the joints, kind of. Since the arms are outstretched, you wouldn't be seeing a crazy amount, but you'd be seeing a little bit like just underneath the elbow, because even whenever you stretch out your arm, you still kind of get a little bit of sag. I mean, the dressing gown isn't exactly the best example, but you know, it's all I've really got right now. But you would see a little bit, not a crazy amount, you'd see maybe a little bit like this sometimes, like this is kind of following a bit more of a curve here, and you'd see little bits like in where you're getting some folding, like in and around here where her arm meets her shoulder, you'd be seeing a lot more folding because her arms are up. And so that's why I've kind of added in these little folds here, because this is kind of where everything's kind of forming into, so you'll be getting those little folds there. It's also good to kind of add in these little lines to show that there is a bit of stretch happening, which again kind of helps to emphasize our curve shape that we've been building across the whole kind of character here. Because we want to have those little bits of the kind of since it's kind of this or this, you'd be seeing, yeah, those little kind of lines which would be there to show that there's a bit of stretch happening. But I mean, I feel like here actually I don't really need to add any more of those because we've already got a lot of them in the kind of muscle lines. You're seeing a lot of the kind of the stretch and bend stuff. Not here though. You know, whenever I was doing the base, I'll explain the little reason for this curve in the middle of the toe tip there. The thing I was thinking about doing like a little like a ninja shoe type of thing, of where they have like almost a sandal look, of where it kind of dips in a little bit. It dips in a little bit at the big toe area, so that it kind of gives it a bit more of like almost a cat foot look. But I think it'll look a bit weird, I think. So I'm kind of just sticking to just maybe more of just the normal boot look. However, I will still have the foot kind of tipped down a little bit around that area, so that it's maybe a bit more form-fitting looking of a boot. There, we've got our details done. Yeah, I just kind of I moved the handle on the whip over a little bit, so it gives you the tail look that a lot of artists use these days, or just a lot of designs in general use these days, because I guess it looks a bit more interesting. So I mean that's why they do it. But yeah, I don't think we're missing anything that I intended on doing. There weren't any like crazy weird little details I was going to add on the suit or anything, because again I don't want to add lines for the sake of lines, because that's whenever you just get into that Flash design from Zack Snyder's Justice League, and or it's the either version of Justice League really, and it just starts to look really confusing. It just starts to kind of burn your eyeballs whenever there's too many lines going on. So I'm just going to keep the lines simple here, where there's just the folds really. That's the only kind of like, I would say arguably too many lines in any one area would be the folds. But yeah, I mean I'll just add a little offshoot line down here, so that, yeah, that kind of goes a little bit somewhere, and it shows like, oh, it's kind of conforming a little bit more to the musculature of the leg. Something a little bit more like that, of where it looks maybe a bit more interesting that way. But yeah, there's not really a huge amount of detailing on the arms and legs, and that's kind of because it's supposed to be a tight suit, so you wouldn't really be seeing a crazy amount of lines or anything like that, and we'll be seeing maybe I'll do a bit more things whenever we get into lighting or something like that. I'm kind of figuring this one out a little bit more as I'm going along. I had an idea of what I wanted to do with it, and then, you know, that idea had to be thrown out the window when the Frankenstein method didn't work. Anyways, we'll go on to the dot shading now, and again, this is probably going to be where I go dark for a bit, because again, if I can't manage to make the actual recording itself shorter, I can make my life editing easier and give myself more silences to edit around. Because I mean, we're already an hour in terms of the recording, and I've only just done the lines. I struggled with that. Hopefully we're not getting like last time, and I'm going to start fumbling my words for about an hour straight. That'll be the last thing I want. You know, it's funny, despite bringing out the big bottle of water at the very start, I have not felt the need to drink this whole time that I've been drawing, which is kind of funny now that I think about it, because I kind of expected to need to drink a bunch during this, because the last time I got thirsty and I didn't have a bottle with me, but now that I actually have one, I'm not thirsty. It's kind of funny, I think, the fact that I went out of my way to draw attention to it, but yet now I don't actually need it, which I think is funny. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's my dry sense of humor acting up again. Okay, and now we've got our dots done. So, I feel like our colours are going to be relatively simple on this one. I'm going to use a little bit of brown, I think, just for the whip. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have like a very slightly purpley colour for the boots, gloves, and the scarf, I think, and then the straps as well. Ever so slightly purple, but the rest of it is going to be mostly black. But yeah, I think it's going to be kind of a very, very dark purple, to the point of where you wouldn't really notice, because our shading is going to be purple, because that's the thing that I'm doing now, which I do like how it looks, so we'll see. I'll talk a little bit more about it whenever we actually get to that place, or to that part. So I'll just very quickly run through our colours here, and then we shall do the shading. Now, before we get too far, I'm gonna throw on my background, which is, oh, why did I do that? Which, yeah, I tend to do this now sometimes, just kind of midway through the colours decide, oh, you know what, I'm gonna do the background now. But there is a reason for it, and it's because, I've said this a few times now before in the past, but, yeah, like, our brain has just completely failed me. This just came out of nowhere. But yeah, what was I gonna say? My oh my, it's really hit me hard now this time. My brain has just decided today is the day. But yeah. So yeah, this is real bad. This is a real bad moment I'm having here now today. Jeez. But yeah, it's a double reason for this. So first things first, I want to be able to see that the purple that I'm using for the like the slight purple that I'm using on the suit is purple enough of where you can still you can tell the difference between it and the background. I want it to stand out a decent amount, so that's not much of an issue. Another thing which I'm actually going to do, kind of like with the Harley Quinn one, I'm going to have a little like white outline around the place, which I think might look alright. It should look okay. Should be decent, I think. It'll look good. We don't want it to be that close to the edge. But yeah, and then the other reason that I wanted to have the that's a little too big as well. But the other reason I wanted to throw on the background now was because that should be about good enough. Was because I ordinarily have a little bit of difficulty telling when I've gone over the lines a little bit, and a lot of lighter colours you'll struggle with that, and that's because again of the fact that lighter colours on a light background obviously are harder to see as opposed to darker colours on a lighter background, and then with darker colours on a dark background it's the same issue again. So I might have to turn on and off the background here, so there might be a little bit of flashing, hopefully not too much. I can't imagine there'll be too much, because I don't normally go too ham on it. Double check that I've gotten the colour. I really hope I don't have to adjust this purple later on, or this purple black, because yeah, if it is too purple, which isn't what we want, we don't want it to stand out too much from our normal black. We want our normal black to still be fairly distinct from it. So this is the kind of danger. We don't want it to seem too distinct. We just want there to be a slight difference, just so that you can kind of tell, oh, that's a different color. Not so different that it draws your eye, because yeah, that's the last thing I really want, is to have your eye drawn too much. You know, it is fairly different, this black and the purple black, but I think I don't mind it actually. I don't mind how it looks. I was kind of expecting it to be a bit more obnoxious, but I guess it's fine. It looks fine to me. I do like how it looks, I guess. But yeah, again, we're going to be kind of seeing a lot of this stuff change whenever we get into lighting a little bit. Okay, so that's our colours done. Yeah, this bottom part maybe blend a little into the background, but that shouldn't be much of an issue once we do the shading, which we'll do now. But yeah, okay. So I think we're going to want a bit of a brighter kind of purpley colour. I want it to be pretty deep purple, like this. That works, because that'll still stand out from the background here. And then what do we want our light to be? I think we want our light to still be a kind of a yellowy colour like this, because that'll stand out a good bit. Okay, alright, let's get into it. We don't want to turn that down. Or we do. My brain's failing me here. There we go. We want to turn it to 40%. Okay, let's get in and do the shading. Our shading purple appears to be a slightly lighter color than our purple black, but I mean it's a lighter color than our black as well, so it might not be too much of an issue. It looks a little strange now, but I think whenever the light goes on as well, the lighter color, our yellow here, once that goes on, I think it'll look better. If not, we can always change it. It'll maybe take a little bit of effort, but we can do it. I think I have confidence that it'll work, because it normally does. Even on other like weird colors, the purple usually looks pretty decent. Might be a little hard to see what I'm doing here, but I do know what I'm doing at the very least. At the very least, this section of the video shouldn't be too long. So, if you're kind of struggling to follow what's going on here, hopefully you're not. You don't have a form of color blindness which would affect the color purple. Because if you do, then this is going to be very tricky. But yeah, I don't think there are. I could be wrong on this, but I don't believe there is a form of color blindness that affects the color purple. Again, I'm not exactly educated in these things. I'm no doctor, but I'm not sure. In the same sense, I'm not exactly too familiar with the forms of color blindness, just in general. Okay, we've done our darks, so now we've got to do our lights, and then we're nearly done. Then we've got to do a few things. We've got to do the signing, we've got to do the light line, we've got to do the texture, and we've got to do the gradient map. I think the texture should look okay on this at the very least. I mean, the last one I didn't really like how the texture looks, but hopefully it'll look okay on this one. There we are. Actually, there's a little bit of writing to want to add on this, which I think I missed. Yeah, just there on the silver here. And add a little bit of it. I mean, that is supposed to be a shiny material, so therefore you'd see a little bit of it on there. Touch at the bottom of that. And then some at the front of this. You would be able to see some light on that. But yeah, now that is that done. So we've got a couple of little things to do. First things first, I'm going to go and grab my black again because I want to make sure I do it before I have to do the gradient map. Because if I forget to do it, I'll be annoyed with myself. Okay, so we'll make a white, and then there's a couple of things we've got to do here. So, let's sign it. Let's do our little signature, which means I actually need my brush to be back to normal again, and then we'll just very ever so quickly do that, and then we've got our signature on. What's next? We need to do our light line. That is, I think, the last big thing, and then there's just the adjustment stuff, like the texture and the gradient map. Excuse me. But that stuff shouldn't take very long. Light line might take a minute though, so we'll just kind of blast through this as quick as we can. Okay, that took a little longer than I would have expected. My hand is a bit crampy now after that because of the very fine detail in doing that light line. But yeah, I'm a little crampy, but not too much. But yeah, thankfully I don't have to really do a whole pile with my hand after this, because we're just throwing on the gradient map and the texture. So, we'll throw on the gradient map here now, and then we'll see. Yeah, we'll see what we want to do. Because a little bit of a lag there, but yeah, because ordinarily with these Batman ones, I've been using like a purple and red kind of color scheme, because that's just kind of what seems like a kind of a Batman thing to me, at least. I think I'm gonna skew it maybe a little bit more pink. this time are red. You know what, maybe a little redder than that, I think. Even a little redder than that. It's still fairly pink, but we'll actually make this part pink though. And darks could stand to be maybe a little darker. Maybe even a little darker. And this could stand to be kind of a bit lower as well. This could stand to be maybe a little lighter. This could then maybe be a little kind of further up. Which, okay, that seems okay. Let's see, what do we want? Overlay. It's maybe a little much. Soft light, that's a bit better. And then we'll get this down to 60%. Ooh, our purple here does stand out a hell of a lot more with this on. Our shading purple stands out quite a bit more. Looks a bit strange with that, but you know what, I do like it enough. Alright, now we'll go and grab the texture. Yeah, that looks quite good, I think. Looks nice enough on our kind of purple. It helps. Now, I think we're done. I am a fan of how the texture looks on this one, at least. I wasn't too crazy on it last time. Again, I think last time it was because it looked a little bit more cartoony, I guess. So I guess the texture maybe didn't fit that theme, I suppose. But it did. I mean, hell, even this looked maybe a little cartoony. But I feel like the texture fits at least here. But yeah. So what have we covered this time? We talked a little bit about It's happened again. It's happened again. I can't do the English language anymore. It's happened. Anyways, we talked a little bit about dynamic poses. We did talk a little bit about redesign and my thought process for this particular redesign. There go those kids shouting outside again. Hopefully that didn't pick up on the mic, because I was mid-sentence whenever that happened. Anyways, yeah, I talked a little bit about redesign, stuff like that. I went into the kind of, I said a little bit about lighting, I guess. But yeah, so alright, I suppose this was a slightly short one. I mean, it's basically the same length as the last one in terms of recording, so who knows. But yeah, if you like the video, do what you'd normally do. Those kids are annoying me now. I really can't convince you otherwise. So yeah, I guess that is it. So